Hey guys, and welcome to the HLTV rankings recap for May the 15th, 2017. This is my first episode of actually doing a full week of this show, so I'm pretty excited to get into it. And this is probably a pretty good week to actually get into it because not too much changed in the rankings. I'm going to start out by giving you a brief overview of the top 10. In at number 1, Australis remain at the top, still incredibly strong in almost all three of the factors recently. You just look at their recent lands, and it's pretty insane how well they've done recently. Dating back to IEM Oakland 2016, they've got to at least the semi-finals of every single LAN they have played at. All that really changed for them this week is a couple of online losses to MV got added to their score, so they lost a few points, but still easily at number 1. In at number 2, it's FaZe with strong results from IEM Katowice finishing second, Star Series where they beat Astralis to get the top spot, and then Sydney where they finished second as well. Reasonably consistent for this FaZe lineup in the last few weeks. They're kind of perfectly in the middle of number 1 and number 3 right now. However, they're reasonably close to both positions, so there's still room to maneuver here. And then in at number 3, it's SK Gaming. Off the back of the wins at IEM Sydney and CS Summit, SK gained a hell of a lot of points in the last few weeks, and now these top 3 teams have a reasonable gap over the 4th spot. In at number 4, Virtus.pro is still just about clinging onto this spot. Their online form and recent results, even at LANs, has been absolutely terrible. However, their overall achievements, dating back to the E-League Major where they finished second, and DreamHack Masters Las Vegas where they finished first, are enough to just about keep them here for now. Still, they look very vulnerable to the team in at number 5, G2, who have been on a bit of a rise recently. Their recent results are really strong, up there with the level of FaZe, and that win at DreamHack Tours helped them out with some more LAN results because this team hasn't actually gone to too many LANs so far. This specific lineup has only been to 3 so far, so they need a few more LANs under their belts, but as soon as they manage to get that, they should be overtaking VP. North remain at number 6, despite their poor showing at IEM Sydney, where they crashed out in 6th to 7th spot. Their past results are still enough to just about keep them here, but again, they're certainly vulnerable from some of these lower ranked teams coming up the rankings. In at number 7, another team who had a pretty poor week last week, it's Na'Vi, who finished 5th to 6th at DreamHack Open Tours, a tournament where they should have really been locked to at least get to the semis, and most people would have assumed they would get to the finals. Again, this team hasn't actually had too many recent results, so kind of surprising to still see them being this high. However, they are very, very vulnerable from some of the teams just below them. They're only 20 points above a couple of these recently rising teams, so they certainly could lose out if they're not careful. In at number 8, it's Hellraisers. In their recent results, they have quite a few online games from quite a while ago that they did well at, so they need to be careful here. They could lose some points as those results get lost over time. However, that second place at DreamHack Tours did give them some solid points on the board. In at number 9, it's Gambit, who finished second at CS Summit, which was a bit of a weaker tournament, but still a strong result. And then that first at DreamHack Open, Austin really did help them out in terms of beating a bunch of the teams that are similarly ranked to them. Again, they are on the verge of catching up with Na'Vi here, only about 40 points behind, which you can certainly gain just by having a decent showing at a LAN. Finally, to round out the top 10, it's actually a North American team here. Optic take the number 10 spot. Currently playing with Jason R. However, some decent recent results have been good enough for them to keep their spot in the top 10. Third at CS Summit and third to fourth at IEM Sydney are keeping them in the runnings right now. I'm not sure if Jason R is going to be a permanent member though, so again, if they make a roster change, they could be at risk of losing a ton of points. Okay, now that we are done quickly going over the top 10, let's have a look at some of the gainers and losers in terms of spots in the ranking this week. Starting with NRG, who gain a spot in the top 30. They moved up 5 spots to get themselves into 28th position. Some wins over some decent ranked teams such as Luminosity, Cloud9 and SK Online helped them gain enough points to just about scrape into the bottom of the top 30 with some recent form results. In at number 23, it's Envy, who gained 5 spots this week. Envy actually played a ton online in this week, and they got some pretty big wins, beating Astralis 2-0 in Pro League, taking a map off of Virtus.pro in ECS. All of these results, even though they are online, helped out their recent form enough to gain them about 20 points, which put them up 5 spots. In a week where a lot of teams didn't really play anything, just gaining 20 points was enough to shoot them up the rankings reasonably far. Remember, this team has been to 2 LANs, but they struggled at both of them, so they're going to need to rely on form if they want to continue to gain places in this ranking. In at number 21 and up 6 spots this week, it's the European lineup of Penta. The reason for their rise in this week is clear. That ESEA Season 24 Global Challenge LAN that they recently won without dropping a single map not only improved their form, but also is going to give them some points in their recent LANs and overall achievements. They actually gained a ton of points this week, and if they continue at this rate, they really could continue to rise. Wins over higher ranked teams such as Godsent and Big definitely helps them up the rankings. In at number 14 and up 2 spots, it's Heroic. In a week where a lot of teams didn't even play any matches and therefore kind of slowly lost points over time due to their past results decaying in terms of relevance, Heroic got a couple of online wins over Kingwin and Na'Vi that gained them a few points and therefore put them up a few spots. Either way, up 2 spots as well, it's Cloud9 who moved up to 12th place. Cloud9 actually gained a couple of points this week again, mainly thanks to that online victory over SK in that Subaru Cup. The 20 points they gained was enough to gain them a couple of spots just because of how tight the rankings are, but this isn't going to be too relevant in the long run. And finally, it's Fnatic up 1 spot from 12th to 11th this week. This is basically just due to, again, Immortals previously being above them and the roster change causing them to lose a bunch of spots. So Fnatic basically didn't really move up, but still, they're near that top 10 now. Also, with teams such as Cloud9 and NiP behind them not looking too threatening, they would be the clear contenders to maybe vie for that number 10 spot that Optic could lose out on if they do decide to bring in a different fifth to Jason R in the future. Now that we're done with the gains of the week, time to look at the losers. Space Soldiers dropped 3 spots from 29 down to 32nd, putting them out of the top 30. Not too much to say here. They were kind of coasting off that WESG result that gave them a bunch of points that maybe they didn't quite deserve as the competition wasn't quite there at that event, but the prize pool meant that it was worth a lot more than most people would argue it should have been. A bunch of teams towards the bottom of the standings lost a couple of places and a couple of points to some of the gains we talked about earlier like Penta and Envy, so I'm going to quickly rattle them off. Luminosity lost a couple of points down to 29. Big lost 2 spaces down to 27. Godsent down 2 places to 26. Singularity down 2 places to 25. And Tricked down 2 places to 24. Again, the point scores at this lower end of the ranking is so tight that these sort of small changes happen all the time. There's not much to read into from this. In fact, quite a few of these teams did gain points this week, but a lot of the other teams gained points more than them. So Big actually went up 14 points thanks to some decent results. However, wasn't enough to gain them any places this week. Renegades also dropped 1 spot due to Penta overtaking them thanks to that really good recent line result. So they're down to 22. Then finally, the big one to talk about this week is Immortals, down 5 spots from number 11 to number 16. Coming into this week, they had 287 points up there in 11th. Now, due to this roster change alone, they've lost 100 of those points pretty much, down to 189 points and down to 16th. Very, very strange to see Immortals make this roster change so soon to the major. They must have had some real issues with FNX to make this change. Either way, this meant that some of their recent solid results, such as 2nd place at DreamHack Austin and 3rd to 4th at IEM Katowice, have become much less relevant because they've only got 4 of their players in their lineup remaining. So yeah, that was basically it for this week in terms of gains and losses. Not too much to talk about because there was basically no LANs played except for that ESEA Global Challenge LAN, which had a lot of lower tier teams in. Normally at this point, I'd talk about what I think will happen coming into the next week. However, I'm going to upload this on like Saturday, so this whole week is basically already gone. Either way, very few LAN tournaments in this week. In fact, I don't think there's any LANs whatsoever that are going to become relevant at all for any of the top 30 teams. There are, however, a bunch of online qualifiers that could change teams' standings in terms of their recent form. For example, we've already seen a bunch of teams beat NiP, who are still reasonably highly ranked in this ranking, so that could help boost them up the standings in their recent form category. Not only have the minor qualifiers just been and gone, and teams such as iGame, not even in the top 30, have made it, but we've also got DreamHack Open Summer qualifiers this weekend, as well as Cologne qualifiers, so there's a lot to look out for. So yeah, the overall thoughts on the rankings right now is that the top 3 are very far away from the rest of the pack, but there's still a reasonable gap in between each of them as well. A couple of weeks ago, it really felt like this could have been the Astralis era. However, we've seen SK able to beat them at a tournament as well as FaZe, so it really looks like these top 3 teams could be vying for the top spots. As for predictions for next week, as I was saying earlier, iGame managed to qualify for the minor. They were ranked 37 coming into this week, so I could certainly see them going up the rankings with a couple of those wins over those higher ranked teams. Remember as well, teams don't specifically lose points for poor results. They only lose the points if these poor results sort of remove any of their past results that were good and were giving them credit. So I wouldn't expect to see Nips slide down too far, especially considering they weren't really in danger from too many teams overtaking them. Maybe Heroic could leapfrog them, but other than that, they should still remain around this 14 spot. What's going to be interesting, though, is that NIP are almost certain to make a roster change soon, and that could really lead to them slipping down the standings, especially considering they are relying on those old lands where they got some okay results for a bunch of these points. Other than that, looking forward to doing this in the future weeks, and hopefully I will be able to explain to you why teams are ranked where they are. Hopefully I'll be able to get them out a bit sooner as well, because this is 5 days after the rankings gone up, so that's a little bit of a delay, but either way, I hope you guys enjoyed watching. This has been the HLTV rankings recap. Thank you for watching. I've been Hawker, and I hope to see you around in the future.